every word you speak is a weapon. And if you're not careful, it will be used against you. If you've ever walked away from a conversation thinking, "I said too much," this video is for you. In a world obsessed with sharing every thought, strategic silence has become a lost art. But today, you'll reclaim it. You'll learn how to use silence for power, how to stop oversharing, and how to speak only when it wins. The Stoics didn't believe in speaking to be heard. They believed in speaking to create impact, when silence had done its job. And that's what you'll walk away with: the ability to stay calm under pressure, to respond with strength, and to build emotional discipline through verbal self-control. This isn't about shutting down, it's about leveling up. Quietly. You're not alone in this. Every man who wants peace, focus, and control has fought this same battle, against impulsive reactions, the urge to explain, the fear of judgment. But you have something now they didn't: a strategy, a code, a calm, stoic way forward. In the next few minutes, you'll discover the habits and mindset shifts that make silence not just a response, but your greatest form of power. So if you're ready to protect your peace, lead with calm clarity, and become unshakable, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with someone you know needs it. Let's begin. And this time, we win quietly. 1. Every word you speak is a gift. Don't give it away for free. You don't need to raise your voice to give away your power. Sometimes all it takes is one sentence spoken at the wrong moment, and it's gone. That deal you were close to closing, that person you almost impressed, that calm state of mind you worked hard to build, lost. Not because of an argument, not because of failure, but because of an unchecked impulse to speak. Speech feels harmless because it's everywhere. We comment, reply, post, explain, defend, all without stopping to ask whether it's helping or hurting. But in truth, every word is a transaction, and most people are selling their peace for far too cheap. When you speak, you hand over your inner blueprint: how you think, what triggers you, where your guard is down. The more you talk, the easier you are to read, predict, and manipulate. People don't just listen to your words. They scan your timing, your tone, your patterns. Words become patterns, and patterns become weaknesses. But silence breaks the pattern. Silence is unpredictable. Silence keeps them guessing. There's a reason interrogation rooms don't rely on shouting. They rely on silence. A long pause forces disclosure. That uncomfortable space creates pressure not by adding more, but by withholding. Silence triggers the other person's need to fill the gap. And in doing so, they reveal what you never had to say. But we've been trained in the opposite direction. Culture rewards constant commentary. Men are told to communicate more, to speak your truth, as if restraint means repression. But not all truth is ready for release. Not every thought deserves a voice. Not every listener deserves your blueprint. The real issue isn't that you speak, it's that you speak without discipline. Emotional talking, nervous explaining, compulsive filling of silence, all of it leaks power. And most of it comes from fear. The fear of being misunderstood. The fear of seeming distant. The fear of not being liked. So we spill, and we think it's a connection, but it's just emotional leakage disguised as honesty. The Stoics understood this trap well. They didn't speak less because they lacked things to say. They spoke less because they valued clarity over expression. They chose silence, not out of timidity, but out of strength. When they spoke, it landed, it shaped, it cut through noise. Because it came from stillness, not insecurity. Now think about your own day. How many times do you speak to win? And how many times do you speak to fill space? That coworker comment you didn't need to make. That explanation you gave, even when no one asked. That opinion you threw in just to feel heard. Every one of those moments chipped away at your mental clarity. Each one was a withdrawal from your internal bank. And most likely, it didn't earn anything back. So here's what you do. Build a habit of pausing, just 3 seconds before you speak. In those 3 seconds, ask yourself, does this serve my goal or just soothe my ego? If the answer isn't clear, stay quiet and let the silence do the heavy lifting. Because real control isn't proven through words. It's proven by knowing when not to use them. Speak only when silence has already won. That's how your words gain weight. That's how your presence builds power. And that's how you begin to lead, not by volume, but by restraint. 2. Speaking too soon traps you say too much, too early, and you're no longer free. You've locked yourself into a version of yourself that the world now expects you to maintain. The moment your words leave your mouth, they become evidence. Evidence that can be used to hold you accountable to things you haven't even fully decided. In trying to express, you've created a prison. Not of bars, but of expectations. This is the danger of premature speech. It feels harmless. You're brainstorming out loud, sharing ideas, just being honest. But in reality, you're surrendering flexibility. You've taken something fluid, your evolving thoughts, and made them public property. Now, if you shift course, you seem flaky. If you pause to rethink, they say you're lost. If you grow, they say you're inconsistent. All because you spoke before you were ready. There's a deeper issue here, though. Most men speak early out of pressure, not intention. You feel the need to say something so you're not mistaken for weak. You feel the urge to define yourself before someone else does. You want to be seen as decisive, bold, in control. But ironically, the one who speaks last usually has the strongest control, because he speaks from observation, not urgency. Think of it like chess. A rushed move feels powerful, but it's rarely strategic. You reveal your hand, the board tightens, and now you're reacting to your own overexposure. Had you waited just one more move, the whole game could have opened in your favor. In the workplace, this shows up in meetings where someone declares a plan too early, before understanding all the variables. In relationships, it's rushing to say what we are before the connection is truly tested. In business, it's announcing an offer before the market timing is right. Each time, the same result: you reduce your room to move. The Stoics moved differently. They didn't bind themselves to declarations. They lived by the principle of controlling what they could and observing what they couldn't. That includes speech. If the situation was still unfolding, they let it. They didn't get trapped by promises made in haste. They weren't in a rush to be seen. They preferred to understand. And when they did speak, it wasn't early. It was after the mind had settled, after the dust had cleared, after they'd watched others expose themselves in the noise. So how do you apply this? Start by not feeling obligated to answer everything immediately. When asked a question, pause. When offered an opportunity, listen first. When you feel the pull to declare your stance, ask yourself, have I earned clarity yet? If not, wait. Silence isn't weakness, it's preparation. The man who delays his speech earns the right to speak with power. In practice, try this. For the next 24 hours, withhold your opinion in all non-essential conversations. Just observe. Listen fully. When asked, say, let me sit with that for a moment. Watch how much more you understand about people, about motives, about your own instincts. This simple restraint shifts everything. Because when you stop speaking too soon, you stop bleeding control. You reclaim the space to think. You regain the ability to move. And most of all, you learn how to speak from strength, not from pressure. That's not hesitation. That's strategy. That's how you stay dangerous, silently. 3. Silence keeps the advantage. Speaking first gives it away. The man who speaks first gives up his ground. Not because his words are wrong, but because he reveals his strategy before understanding the terrain. Power isn't just about having the right answer. It's about choosing the right moment to speak it. And when you speak before the room settles, you don't lead, you chase. In any competitive situation, timing is more valuable than talent. You could have the sharpest insight, the most valid point, or the strongest logic. But if you speak before the dynamics unfold, all that strength turns soft. Because once your position is known, it can be studied, questioned, weakened. But when you stay silent, when you observe first, you gather leverage without lifting a finger. Think of the poker table. The quiet player who watches everyone before making a move isn't weak, he's dangerous. While the loud player shows his excitement or frustration, the silent one collects patterns. While one talks to impress, the other listens to win. That's not passivity, that's mental dominance. But here's the trap. Most people speak first to prove that they're not afraid. They want to show they're smart, engaged, on top of things. In meetings, they rush to contribute. In debates, they fire back instantly. In conflict, they talk over each other just to feel control. But that's not control. It's panic disguised as presence. The man who can sit in silence without losing composure holds more power than the one who argues with perfect logic, because he controls the rhythm, and rhythm dictates who leads. If you let others speak first, You expose their logic gaps, their emotional triggers, and their real motives. And with that insight, your few words, if needed, land like steel. Strategic silence turns you from participant to observer, and from observer to commander. The Stoics knew this game. They didn't rush into speech because they understood that listening is intelligence under pressure. A man who listens well sees not only what's being said, but what's being hidden. And it's the hidden that controls the visible. They let others talk themselves into exposure. And when they spoke, it was from clarity, not ego. You don't need to interrupt to prove you understand. You don't need to answer first to show value. You just need to know what others missed. And you only gain that from restraint. Emotional detachment, stillness before response. So here's what to do. The next time you're in a group setting, be the last to speak. Let everyone else reveal their views, their frustrations, their assumptions. Sit with it. Not to agree, but to collect. Then when you do speak, you won't be reacting. You'll be correcting. Not from emotion, but from precision. And when you're in conflict, hold the silence. Let the other person rush. Let them show their hand. Don't interrupt. Don't defend. Stay grounded. When the timing is right, speak, not to attack, but to realign. That's not passivity. That's discipline in action. Because once you learn how to control your tongue, you learn how to command the room. You speak not from the need to be seen, but from the clarity of what must be said. That's how silence stops being a pause and starts becoming your sharpest form of presence. 4. Don't over-explain. Not everyone deserves to understand you. The moment you start justifying yourself, you lose more than time. You lose presence. Over-explaining is not clarity. It's emotional leakage. It's an unconscious plea for validation disguised as transparency. And the more you explain, the more you reveal your fear of being misunderstood. But here's the truth. Most people misunderstand you not because you haven't explained enough, but because they weren't listening in the first place. We've been conditioned to believe that clarity comes from more words. But clarity doesn't come from adding. It comes from precision. And precision requires restraint. You don't owe anyone a breakdown of your thinking. You owe yourself the discipline to protect your emotional boundaries, especially in a world that rewards performance over presence. If your truth requires a performance to be accepted, it's not truth. It's performance. Over-explaining comes from a very specific fear, the fear of being judged wrongly. So we try to control the narrative, preempt the misunderstanding, anticipate the doubts. But in doing so, we make ourselves smaller. We put our power in the hands of those we're trying to impress. And often they weren't even asking for an explanation. We just volunteered it, out of anxiety. It happens in meetings. You share an idea and immediately follow with disclaimers, caveats, and extra context. It happens in relationships. You make a decision, then drown it in reasons, hoping they won't question it. It happens in conflict. Someone challenges you, and instead of remaining calm, you defend, elaborate, and try to sound logical. But the more you talk, the more you sound like you're asking permission. And nothing erodes authority faster than the tone of apology in a man who hasn't done anything wrong. The Stoics didn't explain, they demonstrated. They believed in leading through consistency, not persuasion. If a man asked about their principles, they answered with action. They never saw explanation as a duty, because to them, truth was something you live, not something you market. And the more you market it, the more diluted it becomes. This doesn't mean you should be vague or avoid clarity. It means you should speak with intent, not insecurity. Say what needs to be said, then stop. Let your statement breathe. Let others deal with their reaction. You're not responsible for how your truth makes them feel. You're only responsible for whether it's true, clean, and aligned. So what can you do? Next time you catch yourself rambling, pause. Ask, did I already make my point? If yes, end it there. Let the silence hold the weight of your words. You don't need to tie every thought into a neat emotional package. You're not a politician selling approval. You're a man standing on internal clarity. And clarity doesn't plead. Practice this. When you deliver your opinion, remove the filler, cut the softening phrases, drop the just so you know, strip out the what I meant was, make the statement, then own the silence that follows. That gap is not empty, it's full of power. When you stop explaining, you stop asking for acceptance. And when you stop asking, you start leading. Because in a noisy world of persuasion and performance, the quiet man who speaks only once and means it commands the deepest respect. 5. Timely silence earns respect. A man who speaks in every moment loses weight in every word. The more you offer opinions, explanations, or reactions, the more your voice blends into the noise. And when your voice becomes predictable, it stops commanding attention. Not because your ideas are weak, but because your presence lacks restraint. Verbal self-control isn't silence for silence's sake. It's how respect is built without demanding it. Most people misunderstand the power of speaking less. They think silence means lack of knowledge, disinterest, or passivity. So they rush to contribute in meetings, fill social spaces with updates, or insert themselves into conversations just to be noticed. But attention is not respect. Presence is not power. And speaking constantly is not the same as being heard. The real impact comes from selective speech. When you speak less, but every word lands. Think about the most respected person in a room. It's rarely the loudest. It's the one who waits, the one who holds back, listens longer, and only speaks when the moment demands it. When he does, the room leans in, not because of volume, but because of reputation built on restraint. This isn't about being passive. This is about being deliberate. When you speak all the time, people assume you're always available. But when you're measured, when you speak only when you've observed and processed, people begin to notice you differently. Your words carry weight not because of how loud they are, but because of how rare they are. In the workplace, this plays out in meetings. The junior employee jumps in at every opportunity. The seasoned leader says little until it matters. And when he speaks, he shifts the direction of the conversation. Not with force, but with authority rooted in timing. In personal life, the same applies. You don't gain respect in relationships by always having something to say. You gain it by knowing when to say nothing and letting presence speak louder than defense or approval seeking. The Stoics modeled this flawlessly. They didn't waste words trying to impress. They didn't respond to every comment or attack. Their silence wasn't indifference, it was discipline. Because they understood that dignity is often built in what you refuse to say. And when they did speak, it wasn't casual, it was clean, concise, and aligned with their values. That's why their words still echo today. Not because they talked a lot, but because they talked right. So how do you bring this into your day? Start small. In your next group discussion, count to 5 before you speak. Use the pause to ask yourself, is what I'm about to say useful, necessary, or just noise? If it's not adding precision or perspective, don't say it. Let others fill the space. Watch how quickly you begin to observe more about people, about tension, about timing. And when it's your turn, speak without rushing. Drop the qualifiers. No, just a thought, or I could be wrong. Say what you mean with full presence and let it hang. That space after your words, that's where respect is built. Because the man who speaks with precision doesn't need to dominate. He lets the room adjust to him. And in a world that shouts for attention, the quietest voice, when used right, can still move the room. Not because it's louder, but because it knows exactly when to speak. 6. Vagueness is strength when you're not ready to commit. The pressure to speak clearly, decide fast, and declare your stance early is one of the most effective traps ever created. It turns silence into suspicion, reflection into indecision, and mystery into weakness. But here's what most don't realize. When you speak too clearly, too soon, you don't sound decisive, you sound exposed. Ambiguity, when used with discipline, is not confusion. It's control. Modern culture has conditioned you to think that being unclear is a flaw. So you rush to label everything. Define the relationship. Set the direction. Declare the plan. Even when you're still figuring it out, you feel the pressure to speak like you've already arrived. But power doesn't move like that. Power moves through patience, adapts through observation, and only sharpens when the timing is right. When you commit to clarity before you're ready, you cut your own flexibility. You eliminate the option to pivot. And the moment you declare a position, others will box you into it. Now, if you evolve, they call it inconsistency. If you pause, they call it doubt. But if you never gave them the headline, they can't hold you hostage to it. This is where strategic vagueness becomes a tool, not to deceive, but to protect. It's not about withholding the truth. It's about guarding timing. You don't owe immediate access to your intentions. You owe yourself the space to decide without pressure. You're not weak for being unclear, you're strong for knowing the moment isn't right. A man who uses vagueness wisely knows how to speak in ways that reveal just enough. He gives shape without building a cage. He shares progress without outlining the whole map. He stays in motion, unreadable by those looking to get ahead of him. And while others rush to announce, he listens, gathers, and lets the world show its cards first. The Stoics understood this deeply. They believed in clarity, but only after contemplation. They never forced declarations when the soil wasn't ready. They left room for adjustment, growth, and the unpredictability of reality. Their restraint wasn't evasion, it was foresight. Because once a word leaves your mouth, it owns you. The Stoic chose to delay that ownership until the moment served reason, not pressure. You see it in politics. The smartest leaders often speak with layered language. They preserve options while keeping others guessing. In negotiation, the most effective players don't lay out full intentions. They probe, test, and adjust. In life, the man who commits only after studying the terrain walks farther, falls less, and rarely has to backtrack. So, how do you live this? Start by replacing instant answers with thoughtful delay. When someone asks, "What's your plan?" or "Where do you stand?" say, "Still clarifying that." Or, "I'm letting things take shape." Then stop. No justification, no extra commentary, just presence, just boundaries, just space to think. When you practice this, you build something most people lack: mental independence. You stop living in reaction. You stop talking to satisfy others' uncertainty, and you begin protecting what matters most, your ability to decide with clarity, not panic. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is not yet. Not because you're unsure, but because your clarity is too valuable to rush. 7. React less, observe more. The moment you react, you surrender position, not just in arguments, but in every conversation where emotion overtakes reason. When you speak too soon, too sharply, or too defensively, you've already lost the frame. You didn't respond, you revealed. And in that exposure, your power leaked. The man who reacts gives control to the one who provoked him. The man who observes keeps the upper hand without ever raising his voice. Reaction is instinct. It's fast, emotional, and tempting. You feel a sting. Someone disrespects you, doubts you, mocks you, and the urge to strike back is immediate. You want to be heard, to be right, to restore balance. But what feels like strength in the moment is often just insecurity dressed as urgency. The truth is, what you react to owns you. It sets your pace, and once you respond on their terms, you're not leading, you're following. But observation is a weapon. It's what turns chaos into clarity. When you watch instead of react, you shift from participant to strategist. You let people show you who they are. You let silence speak before words. You gather what others miss, not because you're passive, but because you're preparing. And when you finally speak, it's not emotional, it's surgical. Imagine a battlefield general. The inexperienced one charges the moment shots are fired. The wise one waits. He watches for patterns. He studies the terrain. He sees what the panicked eyes miss. And when he moves with precision, not noise. That's the same in everyday life. The boardroom, the argument at dinner. The moment someone challenges your authority or tries to manipulate your state, you don't react, you stay still, you observe. This doesn't mean you ignore reality. It means you control your input before releasing output. It means you learn to sit in discomfort without flinching. Stoics called this emotional self-mastery, the ability to remain untouched by impulse so that your next move is chosen, not triggered. They saw emotion not as weakness, but as fuel. But only when it's directed by reason. Too many men believe calm means you've lost, that if you don't respond quickly, you're being walked over. But nothing shakes people more than a man who's unmoved. A man who doesn't take the bait, who sees through the noise. That kind of presence doesn't just protect your energy, it projects quiet strength, the kind that doesn't have to prove itself. Try this today. The next time someone speaks to provoke, pause. Don't flinch, don't explain. Just hold the silence. Let them reveal more. Let them become uncomfortable in your stillness. That's when truth shows itself. Then speak, only if it adds value. And when you do, speak slowly, directly, without apology. You don't owe the world instant emotion. You owe yourself the right to respond on your time from your center. Because when you stop reacting, you start observing. And when you start observing, you begin to lead, not through volume, but through vision. And that's how you reclaim control, not by overpowering the world, but by refusing to let it overpower you. 8. Speak to lead, not to vent. Most people don't talk to lead. They talk to unload. They speak not because the words are ready, but because the feelings are loud. In conflict, they speak to release tension. In meetings, they speak to prove their worth. In relationships, they speak to feel seen. But speech that begins in emotion rarely ends in influence. The Stoic doesn't speak to feel better. He speaks to make the moment better. The world praises self-expression, yet few pause to ask, what's the purpose of what I'm about to say? Venting feels like relief. But relief isn't power. It's a temporary escape, not a permanent shift. And when you make a habit of speaking just to be heard, your words become a reaction, not direction. Leadership requires stillness first, then sound. It doesn't matter if it's your home, your team, or your inner life. If your words don't anchor others, they're just more noise. You've seen it. A man walks into a room and immediately fills it, ranting, rambling, rehashing frustrations. He thinks he's commanding attention, but he's actually a bleeding presence. Now think of the man who watches first, whose words come slowly, sharply, and specifically. He doesn't speak to offload, he speaks to clarify. He speaks to realign energy, not just express emotion. That's not Stoicism as silence, it's Stoicism as command. We've been taught that sharing every thought is healthy, that being open makes us stronger. But sharing without discipline creates leaks. Emotional ventilation without purpose doesn't empower anyone, it just drains the room. And worse, it weakens you. Because when your words are driven by feeling, you give the world the steering wheel to your state. The Stoics knew this well. They never believed in hiding the truth, but they believed in shaping it through clarity, through timing, through restraint. They spoke only when the message had value beyond themselves. That doesn't mean they suppressed, it means they directed. Like a river, they controlled the flow, not to dam it, but to make it useful. This shift, from venting to leading, starts with one habit. Ask yourself before you speak, will this move the moment forward? Not will it make me feel better, not will it win the argument, but will it move the moment? Because if your words don't serve the scene, they're likely serving your ego. And ego may feel good, but it rarely creates lasting results. Try this today. Next time you're angry, frustrated, or anxious, hold your tongue. Sit in the discomfort. Let the words rise, but don't let them out yet. Breathe. Let the emotion pass through the body first. Then once clarity returns, speak, but speak to shift the energy, not dump it. Not because you're afraid of conflict, but because you're now strong enough to control it. You'll notice something powerful. People start listening differently. They lean in. They adjust their posture. They feel your stillness before they hear your sentence. Because you're not speaking to be understood. You're speaking to lead. And people don't follow noise. They follow presence. The man who vents may get sympathy. The man who leads with calm gets follow-through. And the best part? You won't need to say much, because once your words are no longer tied to your emotions, they start carrying the weight of your values. And values, once spoken with discipline, are far louder than any rant could ever be. In a world that rewards the loudest voice, you now understand the strength of restraint. What we've explored today is more than a communication strategy, it's a philosophy of inner discipline. Every word you speak carries weight. It either serves your clarity or scatters it. It either builds your influence or dilutes your presence. And when you learn to speak only when it wins, you no longer chase control, you become it. You've seen how silence protects your peace, how delayed speech keeps your power intact, how saying less doesn't make you invisible, it makes you unforgettable. From not over-explaining, to embracing strategic vagueness, to reacting less and observing more, each choice becomes a brick in the fortress of your self-mastery. This is not about becoming quiet for the sake of silence. It's about building emotional discipline, mental clarity, and the stoic strength to lead through presence, not performance. The strongest men are not those who speak first, but those who know when not to. That control, verbal and internal, is what separates the reactive from the refined. Now it's your turn to put this into practice. Each day, choose one conversation to pause before you respond. Use that pause to assess, does this serve my goal or just my emotion? Over time, that space becomes your strength. And in that space, you'll find more peace, more control, and more quiet confidence. If this message resonates with you, I invite you to share your own stories in the comments. When have you spoken too soon and paid the price? When has silence given you the advantage? Your insight might help someone else reclaim their power. Because this isn't just about words, it's about becoming a man who leads with stillness and lets his silence speak for him.